Welcome to Wrestling with Heart, a podcast looking at pro wrestlers giving back to their community. Join me, Stanley Carr, as I interview wrestling's hottest names who use their platforms as entertainers to raise awareness and do community service.
They said I needed to come back, so I did. And then, it just kind of exploded. And so suddenly, a couple of years into this, I've sold out a couple batches of Lucky Pierre t-shirts, and, things are going very well. And I got a following and, getting booed out of most buildings, but I've got my own little fan club. And then we get on TV. And one of my partners says to me, no, you can't do that. And I said, do what? I can't go on TV? Of course I can. He said, no, I don't care if you do that. He said, but you cannot go on TV as Lucky Pierre. I said, well, why not? He said, do you know what that means? And I said, yeah, it was the Joker's lawyer on Batman. No. Yeah, he was. He was played by Pierre Salinger, who was press secretary to the White House. And, his real name was Pierre. And so, okay, well, that may be true. It is true. It's not all it means. I said, okay, what else does it mean? And he said, have you ever heard of Urban Dictionary? And I said, uh-oh. Because although I did not know what it meant, I sure knew what Urban Dictionary was. And I know that if it's in Urban Dictionary, it's not good.
No.
No. And I'm not going to go into what it is. If people are listening and they want to look it up on their own, that's up to them. I might advise you not to. But I said, oh, gosh, no. No. I said, okay, didn't know it. I'm okay with the fact that I didn't know it. But I'd like to know how in the blue hell you knew that. And so I called Bert and said, yeah, I'm not going on TV as Lucky Pierre. And so we came up with Lucky P. Larson. So there's your answer.
Yeah, it's a pretty good name, It's professional sounding.
Yeah.
It's professional sounding.
It works. And who knows, maybe the P still stands for Pierre. I don't know.
Well, it's a good way of shortening it. I mean,
yeah.
It's obviously sticks with the brand, and you've got a following, and it's taken off. I mean, you're
that's
all over
very true.
Yeah, you're all over the country, manager extraordinaire, and you've won championships.
29 of them in
29.
I've managed many champions who have won a belt, and then I manage them, but I don't count them because I was not there when they won. But I have led many challengers to the ring who have won championships. And, I may or may not have been accused of assisting them in winning it. I don't remember that, but,
It's the great heel mindset of, win if you can, but always cheat.
Win if you can, lose if you must, but always cheat.
That's right.
If you're not cheating, you're not trying.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Who are like some of your influences as a manager, like who you idolize?
Well, I think that on the mic, since promos are a very large part of what I do, I think there's nobody greater than Paul Heyman. I also, as far as a manager, Bobby Heenan, Jimmy Hart, who I'm fortunate that I know very well. And I have an interesting video of him in my office where he said, wait, this is a dentist? I thought this was a dentist's office. You're a lawyer? No, I mean, he's a great guy. Jim Cornette. I mean, when I was growing up, every heel had a manager. Everyone.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
There was Bobby Heenan, Jimmy Hart, Slick, Freddie Blassie, Johnny Valiant, J.J. Dillon, Oliver Humperdinck, Mr. Fuji. Everybody had a manager. And I've met most of them.
Yeah.
The only ones I didn't meet Freddie Blassie. But I've met Slick, met Bobby Heenan several times. I met Mr. Fuji. Didn't meet Paul Bearer. Met Jimmy Hart, obviously, many times. I met Johnny Valiant. Met J.J. Dillon many times. Met Jim Cornette and his tennis racket. So, yeah, I mean, I've met most of the managers.
Yeah.
And, I've enjoyed talking to them. Picking brains, learning.
Yeah, that's what you got to do. I mean, do you feel in today's mainstream wrestling scene, not talking about the independents, I'm talking about the mainstream wrestling scene, do you feel like the art of the manager is
Absolutely.
gone?
Absolutely. I knew that's what you're going to ask. Absolutely. Yeah. Totally. I mean, you look at WWE now, most heels don't have managers. And Paul Heyman is more a spokesman than a manager. I mean, he
Yes.
rarely gets involved. Uh, but he does so with his facial expressions and what he says. But yeah, I mean, managers, it's so rare to have one. And I think that, and I'm not just saying this because I am one, I'm saying this because I've watched it for so long. I think they add to the match. It gives the crowd someone else to get into or to blame or to yell at or argue with. It gives them something else to watch. It adds another element to the storyline. You never know what's going to happen at any given moment. You got to keep your eye on him too.
Or her.
Him, her, whoever the wrestler in the ring has to keep an eye out also. I mean, so I mean, there's a lot that can be done with a manager that can't be done without a manager.
No. What do you feel the reason behind the decline of the managers is?
I think probably one reason is now the ability to talk is so important that most people, don't use a manager because they talk for themselves. I mean, back in the day, some of these people who had managers were great talkers. I mean, Paul Orndorff could cut a good interview, but he was with Bobby Heenan all the time when he was a heel. Rick Rude was with Bobby Heenan, and Rick Rude could cut a tremendous promo. But then again, people like Jake Roberts, Jake Roberts, one of the greatest promo men of all time. You have to go way back to when he was in the original Legion of Doom and was managed by Paul Ellering to have him with a manager. So I mean, the Road Warriors had a manager, and my gosh, could they cut promos? But most people, when they had a manager, let the manager do the talking for them. So,
Absolutely, for sure.
And a lot of people in the independents can't talk.
Really?
And that's, yes.
What?
There are some that do. I mean, I've been in the locker room with, a number of people that have moved on to bigger and better things. Stacks chanting Lauren, WWE NXT, was the mother lover Jake Tucker in USA Championship Wrestling. Blake Christian was in USA Championship Wrestling for a few years. Now he's blowing up all over the place. So, Toby Farley is getting noticed. Dylan McQueen was in USA for quite a while. So yeah, I mean, the stars of tomorrow are in the independents today because everybody had to start somewhere. Not everybody is Ronda Rousey who can walk into the main event.
Oh yeah, for sure,
So.
Yeah, nowadays it's the box office draws
Right
versus the whole product. I feel like that's kind of the thing. And do you feel like that's hurt wrestling or helped wrestling? What
I think the biggest thing that has hurt wrestling, and I've maintained this, I firmly believe this, is not necessarily what people refer to as the death of kayfabe, nor because we would never have had an interview like this 20 years ago.
Right.
Nor do I think it's the spoilers on the internet or modern technology. I think the biggest problem in wrestling, in mainstream wrestling, is the glut of pay-per-views. And the reason I think that is because back when I started watching it, and you had WrestleMania, that was it. And you had a year to build a storyline, to build emotion. Then it went, they added the Survivor Series, the Royal Rumble, SummerSlam. Okay, you had 4 big pay-per-views. You still had 3 months to build storylines, build emotion, build angles, bring in the fans. And now you got a pay-per-view every 3 weeks. And you're putting matches in on Friday, announcing matches on a Friday for a pay-per-view on Sunday. With no storyline, no buildup, no angles, and no emotion. And I think that takes away from it. People who can do 450 splashes off the top rope into a Canadian destroyer through a table, that's certainly acrobatic talent. I'm not taking it away. I can't do that.
Yeah.
But I would rather see a really emotion-filled storyline than I would a bunch of high spots. That's just me. Yeah, and I know that there are a lot of people who want to see the high spots. And that's fine. You can have a match of high spots. I mean, that's basically what, ladder matches are. You know, obviously you're not going to have, Savage Steamboat in a ladder match.
Right.
That's when people go through tables and ladders and whatever. But for me, I would rather a storyline that I'm emotionally invested in, that I want to see. And
Yes.
this guy really hates that guy, and that's why. And
Yeah.
he can't wait to get his hands on him, rather than, oh yes, and this Sunday on pay-per-view, pay your money to watch these two guys wrestle for no real reason. And by the
Hmm.
way, they've wrestled 700 times on TV already.
Yeah.
There was one city that we did shows in, around Nashville. It was outside Dixon, called Burns. And we actually stopped going there with USA because for some reason, the people in that town all rooted for me. It was something else. I mean, I was with Christian James, and we got in the ring, and he looked at me and he said, in a more colorful way of saying it, "Are we the baby faces here?" And I said, "If you're with me, you are." I don't know why. I mean, there were people who turned their backs, literally turned their backs on like the most beloved baby faces in the company. There were signs against all of them. I got standing ovations. It was something. And Bert said, "Yeah, we're not coming back here." And then he told me, he said, "Look, you got to do something to turn these people, because too many people are rooting for you, and it's messing things up." And so I went on TV and told my own fan club to go to hell.
You got to do what you got to do to stay a villain. You
Yeah.
just have to. 1 minute they cheer you, and then you got them right in the
Yeah. I mean,
palm of your hand when you do it.
it's cool to root for the bad guys, I guess.
Hmm.
But, if everybody's rooting for you, then are you really the bad guy anymore?
Yeah, it's like when it's harder, I feel like nowadays, to have good guys because everybody knows so much about you, and the form. It's kind of formulaic, I guess. You kind of have to find reasons to get behind somebody. I think of the underdog thing, but that can only work so many times too.
Yeah. Because if you constantly lose, eventually people are going to give up on you.
That's right. And you kind of have to, it's, dancing. You have to have the right dance partner. You have to be the
Absolutely.
the
That,
lead and the
that,
follower and everything.
that's why I think Piper is so underrated, because if it wasn't for Piper, Hogan would never have been what he was.
Absolutely.
Just like the Iron Sheik says, without Iron Sheik, no Hulkamania.
That's right.
I mean, that guy is without a doubt one of the funniest people on planet Earth. I don't know if
Yeah.
he writes his own tweets or not, but my gosh, when like, they announced that we were in a recession a few months ago, Iron Sheik immediately put out a tweet that said, "The Hulk Hogan's hair has been in a recession for 30 years." I mean, I love him.
He's hilarious, man. He really
Yeah.
is. One of the best heels of all time. Talk about,
Yeah.
you
And now
know,
beloved.
yeah, villains you love to hate.
Yeah.
Really is. So, favorite person to manage and why?
Uh, well, it depends what that question means. I mean, obviously, for its own reasons, managing Katie Lee was always fun,
Sure.
but because I could just stand there and watch her wrestle. Um, but as far as managing a big name, I have been fortunate to manage a few of them. I think managing Scott Steiner and managing Rhino were both really special occasions that I got
Yeah.
to do. Both of them wrestled Lawler. Both of them lost.
Hmm.
Um, so did Tommy Rich. So did Doug Gilbert. So did the Moondog. So did Jeremy Moore. So did Carlito. So did, yeah. Well, anyway, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Someday I'll
Sure.
beat Lawler.
Yeah.
But actually, Tommy Rich beat him. But the next day on TV, Bert reversed it, just so
Oh,
I could
wow.
say I've
Really?
never beaten him. But so managing the big names is always an honor. As far as long-term programs, there was a guy who now lives in New York, Kevin Zion, and I managed him for a while. And that was we had very good chemistry. Kevin and I are and remain good friends. Bam Bam Bundy is another guy I've managed off and on for several years, including at the Gathering in Charlotte, North Carolina, for 3 years running. And it's always fun managing him. And of course, Mike Rapata as the Joker. It's always fun managing him. I mean, the Joker and I do well together. Christian James is a lot of fun in the ring. He doesn't wrestle much anymore. And, of course, the people I manage now are always my favorites. Whoever I'm managing now is my favorite.
If there's anybody that's wrestling, whether it's for WWE or AEW, if you could pick one of those guys to manage, who would it be?
Well, that's an interesting question. Nobody's ever asked me that before. And this is a current wrestler rather
Right.
than like
Right.
of all
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
Well, I think, and I'm also friends with him. I think he's uber, uber talented, and who knows, it may work out that I do manage him someday. But Jay Lethal,
Mm.
I think he's just phenomenally talented.
He's funny too.
Oh, he's brilliant. He's absolutely brilliant. In WWE, I think, and again, they're to the point where they don't need managers,
Yeah.
obviously. But I think getting to work with Cody Rhodes or Seth Rollins would be very educational.
Oh man, that laugh that Seth does, that
Oh yeah,
that's just
yeah, it's not bad. Yeah,
it's just it cracks me up every time
of course,
every time I watch
if
it.
if however, somebody stuck me with Liv Morgan, I wouldn't be opposed either. So.
No. There's a lot of great talent out there today, in the mainstream promotions. And you and I both went to WrestleMania this year, right? You were in Dallas? Go
Yeah,
to
I've been
Dallas?
other than the one that nobody went to, and then the one the year after that where it was kind of half-hearted, and the
Yeah.
conventions were all behind plexiglass and masks, and said it's not worth it.
Yeah.
Other than those two, I've been to the last 10.
That was an incredible, incredible event. I mean, AT&T Stadium was packed like
Oh
to
yeah,
the roof, and to see Stone Cold wrestle like after all these years was a true highlight. And getting to meet a bunch of those guys, like the Undertaker, Kurt Angle, Tori Wilson, the Bella Twins, and just seeing like a wide array of people, larger than life characters and personalities. It was just I was
yeah.
like in Disney World pretty
Yeah,
much.
I've met, gosh, probably well into the over 1,000 wrestlers, and like I said, I've been very fortunate that I've been able, thanks to Lanny and another wrestler who I won't name, I've been able to get into 3 WrestleMania after parties, as a guest, and so I've gotten to meet a lot of people through that. I've only been nervous one time asking to take a picture with somebody and to talk to them, and that's because their last name was McMahon. But other than that, I'm pretty comfortable talking to people.
Yeah, we definitely seem like you got the pedigree, you got the skills, you got the talent, and you've been, look at you combine two of your loves or of your careers into one, and look at you now. It's
And they're
amazing.
and they're symbiotic, really, because like I said, I think being a lawyer helps me do both promos and color commentary, which I do for a couple different TV shows. SICW in out of St. Louis with Herb Simmons, and Tennessee Championship Wrestling. I also manage in PWA, Pro Wrestling Alliance. I'm at RWE every so often in Grubbs, Arkansas. I've been at RWF in around Nashville. TAP. I've been to Swag. I've been to the Gathering. I've been all over, and so being a lawyer helps me do that. And I think being in wrestling helps me as a lawyer because, as I said, I get business from it. So yeah,
Definitely. Why do you feel passionate about helping the community as an attorney, as a lawyer?
I have always maintained that the people in wrestling, yeah, I'm involved in wrestling, but I'm not, and I've taken bumps. Like I said, I've gone through all the things that I've had happen to me. I'm still washing the worm taste out of my mouth from when the boogeyman covered me. But I'm not the one in the ring. Now, I have been in the ring. I've had a few matches. if you want to call them that. But obviously I'm not a trained wrestler, and I don't take the bumps that these guys do all day, every day. And they have entertained me and so many people for so many years, put their bodies on the line. If I can do something to help them, I would. When Daphne was involved in litigation, I found out who was her main lawyer. I contacted them and offered to help. I said, you don't even need to pay me. I just want to be involved. I want to help her. That's how I got to know her. And she and I became close friends. And she even mentioned me by name on one of her DVDs and in her shoot interviews as, one of her lawyers, and et cetera, et cetera. So, yeah, I mean, I try to help the people who, are involved and entertain us. Like I said, you never know what somebody's going through.
No, you really don't. And the fact that you've, lent a hand, and you've been able to do so much for the world of wrestling, and for, the outside world, the the world,
Yeah, I mean,
the world of
Lucky
of
would,
lawyer.
yeah, Lucky would spit on you if you were on fire, unless it would benefit him. But I would.
You have to do what you got to do to just, But so yeah, you had mentioned you've got some shows coming up. Where can people find you on social media?
All right, so you can go to Lucky P. Larson Esquire, Manager to the Stars on Facebook. We just hit 3,500 followers, which blows my mind, and growing. We're getting a new batch of T-shirts that say "Shut up, you might learn something" with my little face in my briefcase. Sold out of those, but people want them, so we're making more. In fact, one of the highlights of my career, if you want to call it that, was when I was at a convention and Ernest the Cat Miller wanted one of my T-shirts, and someone came up to me and said, "Yeah, Ernest Miller wants to know how much your shirts are." So I went up to Ernest Miller. I said, "Excuse me, sir, Cat, you wanted my T-shirt?" He said, "Yeah, how much?" I said, "For you, you wear it and let me take a picture with you." And so, it's a cool looking T-shirt, I think. The Lucky P. Larson Esquire on Facebook is probably the best way to find me. The Legion of Lucky also has its own Facebook page. It's also got its own YouTube channel with a lot of my stuff. SICW, every week they put up a new episode, and I'm not only the manager of the Dogtown Underground there, but I'm also the color commentator, and people for some reason seem to despise me there. I don't know why, but anyway, TCW, Tennessee Championship Wrestling, PWA. I'd say those are the three places I manage the most right now. PWA, Pro Wrestling Alliance in Nashville area, Gladeville, Tennessee. Tennessee Championship Wrestling in West and Middle Tennessee. And then SICW, Southern Illinois Championship Wrestling, which technically is in East Carondelet, Illinois, but it's close enough to St. Louis that I call it St. Louis.
Well, Pete, this has been an incredible time, and we could be here talking about wrestling and
yes, for days.
For days, totally. And I just want to say it means a lot to me to have you come on, and you're more than welcome to come back.
Anytime. I certainly enjoy it.
All right.
And just remember, shut up, you might learn something.
This is Wrestling with Heart. I hope you found this podcast to be informative and entertaining. If you did, please hit the subscribe button and look out for the next edition.